we examine the history of early modern science, we discover that some of the major movers and shakers in that situation were in fact being guided and directed in the formulation of early science by disincarnate entities. In the case of John Dee, the great flower of Elizabethan science, he actually had commerce with angels and all sorts of entities of this type over decades. So I think as we look at these entities, as we try to place them in context to human society, a way of internalizing what they can do for us is to look more toward the shamanic model, where these spirits were not only identified, but the adjective helping was added, and what was envisioned was a kind of symbiosis between ourselves and an invisible world of higher intent.
Now there is a story of Mary's casting out of 7 demons with the help of Jesus. And this actually refers to her own soul progression through the 7 heavens of consciousness to reach full enlightenment and marriage with Jesus. Because each heaven is symbolized by a planet and said to be ruled by a planetary spirit known as a demon. So I show this in this particular tree of life. So the 7 planetary heavens are also equated with the 7 major degrees of initiation. So you pass each degree when you've symbolically defeated the demon. The demon comes to test, but also to teach. It's the Hierophant of each heaven. So you go Moon, Mercury, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn is the usual way it is shown.
Now pay very close attention to this, ladies and gentlemen. Leadbeater does more than give an affirmative answer to our question. He proceeds to describe the demon spirits he received in the various degrees of Freemasonry, at least what some people would call demon spirits. And here's what he says, quote, "The 30th degree brings its angel also, of appropriate character, a great blue diva of the first ray, who lends his strength to the night, KH, somewhat as the crimson angel assists the and perfect brother of the rose cross. The 33rd degree gives 2 such splendid fellow workers, spirits of gigantic size as compared to humanity, and radiantly white in color." C.W. Leadbeater, The Hidden Life in Freemasonry. Notice it's titled The Hidden Life in Freemasonry, and he was a 33rd degree Grand Inspector General. Remember when he said the 33rd degree links the sovereign Grand Inspector General with the spiritual king of the world himself, that mightiest of adepts who stand at the head of the great white lodge, in whose strong hands lie the destinies of earth? Well, who is the spiritual king of the world, ladies and gentlemen? Have any of you studied that? It's Lucifer.
Rebels of that period, like Bruno, Savonarola, and even Paracelsus, paid with their lives, or with their worldly goods and honors, for their efforts to break through this traditional path. In this same period, demonism and demonology and necromancy flourished. The mysterious magic attributed to King Solomon was restored. The grimoires came into existence, and men went out to crossroads at night to invoke spirits. It was a time of rather dismal intellectual benignance.
In Kabbalah also, as it passed particularly down into those dark and mysterious years which we know as the Middle Ages, certain elements of necromancy occurred. But we know that magic mingled with alchemy, that magic is to be found in many of the old Hermetic books, and that the various grimoires, or books of conjuration of spirits, all make use of cabalistic elements. Thus the signatures of angels and demons, and all of these mysterious rites by which spirits were invoked out of the misty deep of space, all these came finally to be called Kabbalism.
And I wonder exactly what this is about. The traditional notion, and I'm sort of restricting myself now to the gnome elf end of this, is that they are artificers of some sort. They are master artisans working in metals and with jewels and that sort of thing. Well, then is the whole, since shamanism we know begins with a kind of deep interpenetration into early metallurgy, that in fact the smith and the shaman are two twin brothers that are linked together in the working with matter, the extraction of energy from matter. Well then, is this whispering from the demon artificers, a phrase which Jung uses, the whisperings of the demon artificers have led us into technological self-expression, and perhaps indeed into self-expression, period. It was in this atmosphere that the Hermetic books were produced and written down. The chief magical ritual of Hermeticism is the invocation, the ability to call stellar demons down into statues, and then these statues prophesy. And this is why Christianity is, it takes the Jewish aversion to idol worship and just raises it to a whole new level of intensity, because they were freaked out by this animating of statues with stellar demons thing that the Hermeticists were into. But they would somehow be able to draw these decans down into the statue, and then they could extract knowledge from the statue. And, this would lay the basis for these sympathetic magics, which were then later developed in the Renaissance.
This seemed to also suggest many other phases of Eastern thinking, which contributed gradually to the integration of the structure of the Kabbalah. All these wheels were worlds. These worlds were in reasonable relationships to each other. The universe was divided into levels and planes and spheres and abodes. Some of these were divine, some of them were sidereal, some were terrestrial, and others were infernal. And the universe began to take on something of the appearance of Dante's universe. A universe with its heavens and its hells. A universe the parts of which were innumerable, and all the parts inhabited by orders of creatures. And these creatures were ruled over by princes and governors and kings and rulers. And out of the good part of this universe, with all its angels and archangels, came ceremonial magic, the white magic, by means of which man was able to call upon the archangelic hosts, or the angels, or the spirits of elements, the spirits of nature and of the earth, to achieve various works and purposes which he regarded as good.
Santa Claus is the master of the elves, and Santa Claus's elves make toys, and Santa Claus is associated with the colors red and white, the colors of Amanita muscaria, and Santa Claus is associated with reindeer, and reindeer are part of the Amanita muscaria cult because you can drink the urine of the reindeer, and it's better than the first get-go of the mushroom. And then, if all that weren't enough, Santa Claus lives at the center of the world. He lives at the North Pole, where Yggdrasil, the magic world tree, is growing. And then he is active at the winter solstice with his gift-giving elves. So this is clearly a very old folkway that has all the motifs of DMT embedded in it. And it's the major area where we give permission for the expression of these images in our own culture. I mean, this is where we get all of this stuff. And the magic toys of Santa's workshop are the demon artifacts of the elfin forges that are alchemical productions. Yeah.
It really is a Santa Claus.
Hey.
So we have to come now to the consideration of this structure of magic and how it really came into existence. I think we must, first of all, determine that behind the physical world there is a world of energies, and that these energies are stratified. That behind the physical body is an etheric energy, a kind of ether, which permeates the body. And the physical body is constantly energized from a certain definite structure. In other words, the energy that comes into the body of the individual is supposed to arise primarily from nutrition, from air, and from sidereal influences of one kind or another.
I discussed this once with an entity, and it said to me, well, you know, we've disguised ourselves as an extraterrestrial invasion so as to not alarm people with what's really going on.